So we're starting off with glycolysis. Start off with your 6 carbon molecule, so your glucose. Glucose is phosphorylated using 2 ATP. Right, so your 2 ATP are both going to go and get dephosphorylated, form 2 ADPs. That goes and forms a molecule of hexose, so hex is in 6, bisphosphate, bis is in 2, phosphate is in phosphate. Right, that is an unstable intermediary, right? So that's going to go and break down into 2 molecules of tri is in 3 phosphate molecules. To stabilize that, an inorganic phosphate molecule is going to go and be added to it. That goes and forms bis, or triose, bis is in 2, phosphate is in phosphate again. That is then reduced and dehydrogenated. As it's reduced, you end up with reduced NAD, right? And 2 ATPs are being formed. So during glycolysis, you're getting a net gain of 2 ATPs. So that's where your first 2 ATPs are coming from. This forms 2 molecules of pyruvate. Right, remember at this point, we're only going to go down like one side, but basically double of this is happening. Right, your pyruvate is carried into your Krebs cycle by the link reaction. In the link reaction, the first thing that's been happening is the pyruvate is being decarboxylated, so it's losing the carbon dioxide. It's also been losing 2 hydrogens because you're getting reduced NAD. That 2 carbon molecule is carried into the Krebs cycle by acetyl coenzyme A. Right, so the acetyl coenzyme A goes and carries it into the Krebs cycle, where that binds to a molecule of oxaloacetate to form citric acid. Citric acid, 6 carbon molecules. Right, your citric acid is then decarboxylated and dehydrogenated, so you form another carbon dioxide and you form another reduced NAD. This is further decarboxylated and dehydrogenated again to go and form a 4 carbon intermediary. Remember, your NAD or your reduced NAD is going to go and move down into your electron transport chain. The 4 carbon molecule goes and moves around and is dephosphorylated, forming another molecule of ATP, and is dehydrogenized by FAD, which goes and forms FADH2, which moves down into your electron transport chain. Is further dehydrogenated using NAD until it goes back to what we started with. So you start back, or you end up with your oxaloacetate. Right, remember that you can call that OAA. Right, 4 carbon molecules. It's important that you remember oxaloacetate, citric acid. The other, you can just call them 5 carbons, 4 carbons, because they're only intermediates. Right, so our NAD then moves down into the electron transport chain. The NAD is reduced in complex 1, right? Complex 1 is technically called NAD reductase or dehydrogenase because it's removing the hydrogen from it. That causes 2 electrons to go and enter the electron transport chain at complex 1. Right? These electrons are going to go and move all the way through your electron transport chain, all the way to complex 4, using electron acceptors C and Q. We start off, the 2 electrons give complex 1 enough energy to transport 4 hydrogen molecules into the intermembrane space. 4 hydrogen molecules at complex 3 and 2 hydrogen molecules at complex 4. Right? So we're going and we're building up a high concentration of hydrogen molecules in this intermembrane space. At the same time, somewhere else on the membrane, you've got FADH2 is dehydrogenized at complex 2. This releases 2 electrons into the electron transport chain. At this point, though, these 2 electrons can only move through complex 3 and complex 4. So in terms of FADH2, that can only cause 6 hydrogen ions to be transported in, right? So it's not as efficient, but you're making FADH2 in the Krebs cycle anyway, so it's going to get used. The concentration, or the high concentration of hydrogen that you get in this inner membrane space, then diffuses back out of the membrane through ATP synthase. That gives the ATP synthase enough energy to phosphorylate a molecule of ADP into ATP, which goes off and carries the energy around the cell. At the same time, your 2 electrons that go and come out of complex 4 are accepted by an oxygen atom to go and form a molecule of water, right, which is the water that we're breathing out.